Have you ever wondered if someone could spend years searching for the same face without ever knowing whether she truly existed? Alpha King Ryan Whitmore woke before dawn with the familiar feeling that another unforgettable dream had slipped away just as morning arrived. Once again, he had stood beneath the branches of an enormous ancient oak glowing beneath silver moonlight. Once again, a young woman with gentle blue eyes and long chestnut hair had looked back at him without fear, her expression filled with quiet sadness and unshakable hope. She had never spoken a single word. She had only smiled as though she had been waiting for him across countless seasons. Every time he reached toward her, the dream dissolved into drifting moonlight before his hand could ever touch hers. It had happened so often over the past 7 years that Ryan no longer questioned whether the dreams meant something. Instead, he wondered why the same unknown face continued returning night after night with such remarkable clarity. Even after opening his eyes inside the royal chambers of Blackwood Castle, he could still remember every detail of her face more clearly than the faces of many nobles he met each day. Standing beside the tall window overlooking endless forests, Ryan watched the first rays of sunlight spread across the kingdom while quietly asking himself the same unanswered question. Who are you? Before another thought could form, a firm knock echoed against the chamber door. His captain of the guard entered with respectful urgency before lowering his head. Your Majesty, a carriage has just arrived from the eastern border pack. Ryan turned calmly toward him. Relations between the two packs had remained strained for years, making any unexpected arrival unusual. Who has come? He asked. The captain hesitated. A young Omega, Your Majesty. According to the documents delivered with her, she has been transferred as part of a private agreement between her family and the eastern border leaders. Ryan frowned almost imperceptibly. Transferred. The captain lowered his eyes. That is the wording written in the agreement. Something about the answer unsettled Ryan in a way he could not explain. Without another question, he crossed the chamber, fastened his black royal cloak across his shoulders, and walked toward the castle entrance. Outside, cool autumn air drifted through rows of towering pines as the carriage waited quietly within the stone courtyard. Several royal guards stood nearby, maintaining respectful distance. The carriage door slowly opened. A young woman stepped down carefully, her simple cream-colored dress carrying traces of dust from a long journey beneath a forest green cloak clasped at her shoulders. She held no anger in her eyes, only quiet uncertainty, as though she had already accepted that her future belonged to decisions made by other people. The moment Ryan saw her face, the entire world around him seemed to fall into perfect silence. The courtyard disappeared. The guards vanished from his awareness. Even the autumn wind felt as though it had stopped moving. Before him stood the very woman who had visited his dreams for 7 long years. The same gentle blue eyes, the same chestnut hair catching the morning light, the same peaceful expression he had searched for every night without ever believing she truly existed. Ryan drew one slow breath, unable to hide the astonishment reflected across his usually composed face. The young woman looked toward him with quiet confusion, completely unaware that the stranger standing before her had already known her smile long before destiny finally allowed them to meet. The young woman lowered her eyes the moment she realized the man standing before her was the Alpha King himself. She had prepared herself for countless possibilities during the long journey across the mountains, but none of them included being welcomed by the ruler of the kingdom in person. Every story she had ever heard described the Northern Pack as fierce and unforgiving. She expected cold orders, guarded rooms, and suspicious eyes. Instead, Ryan Whitmore simply looked at her with quiet astonishment, as though he had unexpectedly found something precious he had been searching for far longer than he understood. After a respectful silence, he offered a gentle nod. Welcome to Blackwood Castle. His calm voice carried neither accusation nor triumph. It was simply kind. Emma Carter hesitated before lowering her head once more. Thank you, Your Majesty. She expected servants to lead her toward a prison cell or an isolated chamber somewhere inside the fortress. Instead, the royal steward escorted her through bright corridors lined with tall windows overlooking peaceful gardens, flowering courtyards, and ancient oak trees glowing beneath the morning sun. The room prepared for her overlooked a quiet lake surrounded by pine forests. Fresh flowers rested upon a small wooden table beside several books and a pitcher of warm herbal tea. The large windows stood open, allowing cool mountain air to drift gently through white curtains. Emma slowly turned in disbelief. There were no iron bars, no locked doors, no guard stationed inside. When the steward finished arranging the room, he bowed respectfully. "If you need anything, someone will always be nearby." Emma looked toward the doorway in confusion. "Am I allowed to leave this room?" The steward smiled politely. "You are welcome to walk through the gardens whenever you wish. His Majesty has given very clear instructions." Emma blinked in surprise. "What instructions?" The steward answered without hesitation. "No one is to treat you as property, a prisoner, or a reward. You are to be treated as our honored guest." After he quietly departed, Emma remained standing in the center of the room for several minutes, unable to understand how everything she believed about the Northern Pack had been overturned within a single morning. She carefully stepped toward the open balcony where sunlight reflected across the peaceful lake below. Birds circled above the trees exactly as they had back home before everything changed. For the first time since leaving her family's estate, she allowed herself to breathe without fear pressing against her heart. Elsewhere inside the castle, Ryan stood in the royal library staring absent-mindedly at an unfinished council report. Every sentence disappeared beneath the memory of Emma's face. His oldest advisor quietly entered before setting another collection of documents upon the desk. "Your Majesty," the advisor asked gently, "is something troubling you?" Ryan remained silent for a long moment before answering with unusual honesty. "I have spent 7 years dreaming about someone I believed could not possibly exist." The advisor waited patiently. Ryan finally looked toward the window overlooking the eastern gardens where Emma had just stepped outside into the sunlight. "This morning," he said softly, "she arrived at my gate." The elderly advisor followed Ryan's gaze, but could not yet understand the deeper meaning hidden behind those simple words. Meanwhile, Emma wandered slowly along the stone garden paths, touching blooming flowers with quiet wonder, never noticing that from a distant balcony, the Alpha King watched only long enough to reassure himself that the woman who had lived inside his dreams for so many years was finally walking beneath the same sky as he was. The peaceful rhythm of Blackwood Castle slowly began to replace the fear Emma Carter had carried throughout her long journey across the border. Each morning she wandered through the royal gardens where roses climbed ancient stone walls and birds gathered beside quiet fountains without ever fearing the people around them. She expected suspicious glances from servants and guards, yet she found polite smiles instead. No one questioned her presence. No one whispered behind her back. Every act of ordinary kindness felt unfamiliar after spending so many years believing trust could disappear without warning. Wanting to repay the unexpected generosity shown to her, Emma quietly asked the royal steward whether she might be allowed to help inside the castle rather than spend every day as an honored guest. Within hours, she found herself assisting the royal healers by organizing dried herbs, preparing fresh tea from mountain plants, and comforting frightened children whose parents had traveled long distances seeking treatment. Her gentle voice carried remarkable patience, and before long, even the youngest patient smiled whenever she entered the healing hall. The elderly head healer watched with quiet admiration. "You seem to know exactly what every frightened child needs," she remarked one afternoon. Emma smiled softly while carefully wrapping fresh lavender into small cloth bundles. "Sometimes people only need someone willing to stay beside them until they feel safe again." Those simple words lingered in the healer's thoughts long after the conversation ended. Elsewhere inside the castle, Ryan Whitmore continued fulfilling his responsibilities as Alpha King, yet his attention often drifted toward the eastern courtyard whenever official meetings became especially long. More than once he found himself walking through the gardens without consciously deciding to do so. Each visit revealed another unexpected glimpse of Emma's quiet character. One morning he watched from beneath the shade of an ancient oak tree as she patiently repaired the wooden wheel of a little boy's toy wagon before returning it with a smile bright enough to erase the child's disappointment. Another afternoon she helped an elderly gardener carefully replant flowers damaged during a recent storm, refusing every offer of assistance because she insisted the work belonged to everyone willing to care. Ryan noticed something that surprised him more with each passing day. Emma never behaved kindly because someone important might be watching. She behaved kindly because kindness was simply who she had become. One evening, as golden sunset painted the castle walls with warm light, Ryan encountered Emma beside the peaceful lake beyond the royal gardens. She stood quietly watching two white swans glide across the still water while the first autumn leaves drifted gently around them. Neither spoke immediately. The silence between them felt comfortable rather than awkward, almost as though the place itself remembered conversations they had never actually shared. Finally, Ryan looked toward the distant horizon. "Have you always loved quiet places?" he asked. Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Quiet places listen without asking people to prove who they are." Ryan smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is why I have always preferred forests to crowded halls." Emma glanced toward him with gentle curiosity before laughing softly. "That sounds exactly like something I expected you to say, even though we have only just met." Ryan looked at her in astonishment. "Why would you expect that?" Emma hesitated for only a moment before answering honestly. "I do not know. Sometimes you seem strangely familiar, as though I have seen you somewhere long before today." Ryan remained silent as those words settled deeply within his heart. He had believed he alone carried impossible memories born from dreams. Yet standing beside the quiet lake beneath the fading evening sky, he suddenly wondered whether destiny had been quietly guiding two strangers toward one another long before either of them realized they had been walking the same path. That evening, long after the castle had grown quiet, Ryan Whitmore remained alone inside the royal library, while a gentle fire cast warm light across shelves filled with centuries of forgotten history. An open journal rested before him, yet he had not written a single word. Instead, he stared absent-mindedly toward the window where moonlight stretched across the gardens below. The dream returned to him with remarkable clarity. The same ancient oak tree, the same silver moon, the same young woman standing beneath its branches with peaceful blue eyes that somehow carried both sadness and hope. For 7 years the dream had never changed, and now the woman who had once existed only within his sleeping mind was walking freely through his castle. A quiet knock interrupted his thoughts. His oldest advisor entered carrying several historical records requested earlier that afternoon. The elderly man noticed Ryan's distant expression almost immediately. "You are thinking about our guest," he observed gently. Ryan offered a faint smile before nodding. "I no longer know whether I have been dreaming about her or remembering someone I had never met." The advisor remained silent, allowing the words to settle before asking, "How long?" Ryan closed the journal slowly. 7 years. Always the same place. Always the same face. She never speaks. Yet every dream leaves me with the feeling that I have forgotten something I was never meant to lose." The old advisor studied him thoughtfully. "Have you ever shared these dreams with anyone?" Ryan quietly shook his head. "Not until today. They sounded impossible even to me." Meanwhile, unaware of the conversation unfolding elsewhere inside the castle, Emma Carter spent the evening helping the royal healers organize fresh herbs gathered before sunset. She carefully labeled glass jars filled with dried lavender, chamomile, mint, and mountain sage while listening to the elderly head healer describe old remedies passed down through generations. The peaceful work reminded her of happier childhood afternoons before fear and difficult choices changed the rhythm of her life. After finishing, she stepped outside into the cool evening air where hundreds of stars shimmered above Blackwood Castle. Drawn by quiet instinct, she wandered toward the ancient oak tree overlooking the lake. Its massive branches stretched gracefully across the moonlit hillside exactly as though it had been waiting there for centuries. Emma stopped beneath its wide canopy and gently rested one hand against the weathered bark. Without understanding why, an unexpected sense of familiarity washed over her. Closing her eyes for only a brief moment, she suddenly remembered fragments of a dream she had carried since childhood. A tall man stood beneath this very tree, his silver eyes filled with patient warmth as autumn leaves drifted between them. She had never seen his face clearly until now. Her heart skipped softly as the memory became unexpectedly vivid. Before she could gather another thought, quiet footsteps approached along the stone path. Ryan had followed the same instinct that had drawn him outside. When he reached the hill overlooking the lake, he stopped several feet away. Moonlight filtered through the ancient branches exactly as it had in every dream he had ever known. Emma slowly turned toward him, surprise giving way to quiet recognition. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Standing beneath the old oak tree with the peaceful lake reflecting the stars behind them, both realized they were no longer experiencing separate dreams remembered in silence. Somehow, long before destiny had brought them together, they had already been meeting beneath this moonlit tree in places neither waking life nor ordinary memory could fully explain. For several quiet moments, neither Ryan Whitmore nor Emma Carter moved beneath the ancient oak tree. The cool autumn breeze stirred the leaves overhead, while moonlight reflected across the peaceful lake, creating the same breathtaking scene both of them had unknowingly carried within their dreams for years. Finally, Emma spoke first, her voice barely louder than the whispering wind. "I have stood here before." Ryan looked at her with gentle understanding instead of surprise. "So have I." Emma slowly turned her gaze toward the broad branches stretching across the night sky. "Ever since I was a little girl, I dreamed about this tree. I never knew where it was, only that someone was always waiting beneath it." Ryan drew one slow breath before answering quietly. "For 7 years, I believed those dreams belonged only to me." They exchanged a thoughtful silence, not because either doubted the other, but because both struggled to understand how two lives separated by distant borders could have been connected long before they ever met. The following morning, Ryan invited his oldest advisor and the kingdom's most respected elder historian to the royal archives hidden beneath Blackwood Castle. Ancient shelves filled with weathered journals, maps, and handwritten family records surrounded the circular stone chamber. Ryan carefully described the dreams without exaggeration, while Emma quietly listened beside him. The elder remained thoughtful until his attention settled upon the delicate silver pendant Emma always wore beneath her cloak. "May I see that?" he asked gently. Emma unclasped the small pendant and placed it carefully into his weathered hands. The pendant displayed a finely crafted crescent moon surrounded by tiny stars worn smooth through many generations. The elder's expression slowly changed as recognition replaced curiosity. He opened an enormous leather-bound genealogy preserved inside a carved wooden case, and carefully turned page after page before stopping beside a faded illustration nearly identical to the pendant. "This symbol belongs to the House of Silver Moon," he whispered, "a family believed to have disappeared many generations ago." Emma looked at the illustration before touching the pendant resting in the elder's hand. "My mother told me it had belonged to my grandmother, but she never explained anything more." The elder nodded thoughtfully. Many ancient families protected certain heirlooms because they represented promises rather than wealth. According to these records, the descendants carrying this pendant were said to share dreams with the person destined to help unite divided packs during an age of fear. Ryan remained silent, carefully absorbing every word. The explanation sounded extraordinary, yet nothing else could explain the years of impossible dreams both he and Emma remembered so clearly. The elder gently returned the pendant. Whether every detail of these stories is historically perfect, no one can say. Legends often become difficult to separate from truth across centuries. But one thing remains remarkably consistent. Emma looked toward him. "What is that?" The elder smiled kindly. "Every account describes destiny not as something that removes freedom, but as an opportunity that must still be chosen." Those words settled deeply within both of them. Later that afternoon, Emma walked through the royal gardens holding the pendant more thoughtfully than ever before. She no longer saw it as a simple family keepsake. It had become a quiet reminder that her life might hold answers she had never imagined seeking. As Ryan joined her beside a bed of late-blooming roses, a royal messenger hurried through the garden, carrying a sealed letter bearing the crest of Emma's family. Ryan accepted the message calmly before breaking the wax seal. His expression gradually grew more serious as he read the contents in silence. Emma noticed the change immediately. "Is something wrong?" Ryan slowly folded the letter before meeting her eyes. "Your brother has crossed the border." He paused briefly. "He says he has come to take you home, but I believe he is hiding a very different reason for coming here." The following morning, a quiet mist drifted across the castle gardens as preparations were made for the unexpected visitor. Ryan Whitmore did not order extra guards to surround the courtyard or fill the halls with unnecessary displays of authority. Instead, He instructed everyone to receive Emma's brother with the same dignity offered to every guest entering Blackwood Castle. Truth has no reason to fear courtesy, he told his council before walking toward the audience chamber. Emma stood near the tall windows overlooking the gardens, her hands gently folded together as she watched the gates slowly open. Memories she had spent years trying to leave behind returned with surprising clarity. She remembered childhood afternoons spent following her older brother through the family orchard, believing he would always protect her. She remembered the day everything changed, when fear and ambition quietly replaced affection inside his heart. Even now, she struggled to understand how someone she once trusted could have chosen another path. A servant quietly announced the visitor's arrival. Moments later, her brother, Daniel Carter, entered the chamber wearing expensive travel clothes that reflected newly acquired wealth rather than the simple life in which they had both been raised. His confident expression briefly disappeared the moment he realized Emma stood beside the Alpha King instead of behind guards or locked doors. He had clearly expected to find someone frightened and powerless. Instead, he found his younger sister standing peacefully with quiet confidence. Daniel forced a polite smile. "Emma, I came to bring you home." Emma looked at him calmly before asking the question she had carried since the day she crossed the border. "Did you truly believe I would never learn why you sent me away?" Daniel hesitated only briefly. "Everything I did was necessary." Ryan remained silent, allowing the conversation to belong entirely to the siblings. Daniel slowly turned toward the Alpha King. "Your Majesty, there are family matters that should remain private." Ryan answered with calm respect. "If Emma wishes to speak privately, that decision belongs to her." He then stepped back several paces without another word. Emma noticed immediately that Ryan was not making the choice for her. For perhaps the first time in her life, someone had trusted her to decide her own future. She looked back at Daniel with steady eyes. "We will speak here." The confidence in her voice surprised even herself. Daniel lowered his gaze for a moment before quietly exhaling. "You believe I sold you because I wanted money." Emma remained silent. "That is only part of the truth," he admitted. "Years ago, our father discovered documents hidden among our family's oldest records. They described the Silver Moon bloodline and the ancient pendant you inherited from grandmother. He believed powerful families would one day come searching for you if they learned who you really were." Emma listened without interrupting. Daniel continued, his voice carrying visible regret. "When father died, several influential leaders began asking questions about our family. I became afraid. I convinced myself that sending you far away would hide you from everyone looking for the Silver Moon heir. I chose the worst possible way to protect what I did not understand." The chamber felt completely silent. Emma searched her brother's face, recognizing genuine remorse where anger had once lived. Ryan carefully studied Daniel as well, sensing that although fear had shaped his decisions, another piece of the story still remained hidden. Before anyone could speak again, the elderly historian entered carrying another weathered scroll discovered only moments earlier within the royal archives. He bowed respectfully before addressing Ryan. "Your Majesty, I believe we have finally found the missing record explaining why the dreams began long before either of them ever met." Ryan and Emma exchanged a quiet glance as the old scholar slowly unrolled the ancient parchment, knowing that whatever was written upon those faded pages would change everything they believed about destiny, family, and the mysterious bond that had guided their lives for so many years. The ancient parchment rested across the polished oak table while everyone inside the royal archive remained completely silent. Time itself seemed unwilling to disturb the fragile pages that had survived countless generations. The elderly historian carefully adjusted his spectacles before reading the faded handwriting preserved beneath the royal seal. "Of the House of Silver Moon. When the descendants of the Silver Moon line become separated by fear rather than choice," he began slowly, "the moon shall reveal their path through shared dreams until they meet beneath the ancient oak. Neither power nor distance shall break what destiny asks them to freely choose." The final sentence echoed softly through the chamber before silence settled once more. Emma Carter lowered her eyes toward the silver pendant resting in her hand, while Ryan Whitmore remained motionless beside her. Neither of them felt excitement. Instead, both experienced the quiet weight of understanding. Their dreams had never demanded obedience. They had only guided 2 lives toward the opportunity to choose one another with complete freedom. The historian gently rolled the parchment closed before looking at them with a warm smile. The old stories never promised that destiny decides your future. They only remind us that sometimes 2 hearts are given the chance to recognize each other before the world does. Daniel Carter stood several steps away, unable to meet his sister's eyes. His shoulders seemed far heavier than when he had entered the castle that morning. "Emma," he said quietly, "I believed hiding you would protect you. Instead, I only made your life smaller." Emma looked at the brother she had once admired throughout her childhood. The anger she had carried since crossing the border had slowly dissolved during the conversation, replaced not by approval, but by understanding. "Fear changes people," she answered gently. "But every person still chooses what to do after fear arrives." Daniel nodded slowly, accepting the truth of her words without attempting to defend himself further. Ryan stepped forward only after the siblings had finished speaking. His voice remained calm and respectful. "Emma, no ancient record, no prophecy, and no council can decide what happens next. You are free to remain here. You are free to leave with your brother. You are free to choose a different path entirely. Whatever decision you make will be respected." Emma looked at him in quiet surprise. During most of her life, other people had spoken about her future as though she were absent from the room. Ryan had become the first person to place that future entirely in her own hands. She walked toward the tall windows overlooking Blackwood Castle, where afternoon sunlight stretched across the gardens she had come to love. Children laughed near the fountains. Healers gathered fresh herbs beside blooming flowers. Birds circled peacefully above the ancient oak standing proudly beyond the lake. None of those moments had been forced upon her. They had simply welcomed her exactly as she was. After several thoughtful breaths, Emma turned back toward everyone waiting. "I am grateful my brother came because the truth needed to be spoken," she said softly. Then she looked directly at Ryan. "But I will not stay because of dreams, legends, or old promises." Ryan listened without interrupting. Emma smiled with quiet confidence. "I will stay because this is the first place where no one asked me to become someone else before allowing me to belong." A gentle silence followed her words before warm smiles slowly appeared around the chamber. Even Daniel lowered his head with peaceful acceptance, realizing that his sister had finally found the freedom he had unknowingly taken from her years earlier. As the afternoon light continued filling the royal archive, a castle messenger hurried toward the open doorway carrying an official summons from the High Council. The leaders of every allied pack had requested an extraordinary gathering at Blackwood Castle after hearing unexpected rumors about the mysterious Silver Moon heir, and for the first time Emma understood that her personal story was about to become known far beyond the castle walls. The Great Hall of Blackwood Castle had rarely held so many voices beneath its towering stone arches. Leaders from every allied pack, respected elders, healers, scholars, and noble families filled the chamber, while sunlight poured through magnificent stained glass windows, covering the polished marble floor with shifting colors. Emma Carter paused outside the enormous doors, drawing one slow breath before stepping forward. She no longer wore the uncertainty that had accompanied her arrival weeks earlier. The same ivory dress and forest green cloak reflected quiet elegance rather than fear, and the silver moon pendant rested openly against her heart. Ryan Whitmore walked beside her, neither leading nor shielding her, but matching her pace as an equal. The moment they entered, the conversations gradually faded until the hall became completely silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward the young Omega whose story had spread across the Northern Territories with surprising speed. Ryan guided Emma to the center of the chamber before calmly facing the council. "Many of you have gathered because you have heard rumors," he began. "Today you will hear the truth instead." His steady voice echoed through the vast hall without anger or accusation. Emma Carter did not arrive here as a prisoner. She did not arrive here as a prize. She arrived because fear shaped choices that should never have been made. Since entering Blackwood Castle, she has shown compassion, wisdom, humility, and kindness to everyone she has met. Those qualities were never created by ancient legends. They have always belonged to her. Quiet murmurs moved gently across the gathering before fading once again. Ryan stepped back, giving Emma complete freedom to decide whether she wished to speak. She looked around the chamber, recognizing curiosity in many faces but no hatred. After a calm breath, she spoke softly. For a long time, I believed my life belonged to other people's decisions. I believed my value depended upon whether someone else accepted me. Coming here taught me something very different. True belonging begins the moment we stop allowing fear to decide who we are. Several elders exchanged thoughtful glances while healers standing near the front smiled warmly. Emma continued with quiet confidence. I do not stand before you because of an old prophecy. I stand here because kindness was offered to me when I expected judgment. That kindness gave me the courage to become myself again. At the rear of the hall, Daniel Carter listened in complete silence. Every word spoken by his sister reminded him of the years she had endured because of his fearful choices. Unable to remain hidden any longer, he slowly stepped forward before lowering his head before the entire council. Everything she has said is true, he admitted. My fear became her burden. I cannot change what I did, but I will spend the rest of my life making different choices. His unexpected confession spread through the hall more powerfully than any accusation ever could. The oldest elder slowly rose from his seat before addressing everyone gathered. When people speak honestly, truth requires no defense. One by one, respected council members nodded in quiet agreement. No dramatic celebration followed. No loud arguments erupted. Instead, understanding replaced suspicion with remarkable calm. Ryan looked toward Emma, seeing peaceful confidence where uncertainty had once lived. She returned the smile, realizing she no longer felt like someone standing before strangers. As warm afternoon light filled the great hall, the elder announced that one final royal ceremony would take place before sunset, a gathering that would not celebrate ancient prophecies or forgotten bloodlines, but the freedom of every person to choose compassion over fear. And Ryan quietly realized that before the day ended, he would make a promise that neither dreams nor destiny had ever required, but one his own heart had chosen freely. As the golden light of late afternoon slowly gave way to the silver glow of evening, the people of Blackwood Castle gathered once more within the great courtyard where hundreds of lanterns illuminated ancient stone walls and flowering gardens. Families from every allied pack stood together without regard for old borders, while musicians filled the cool autumn air with gentle melodies carried softly across the surrounding forests. Emma Carter paused beneath the wide branches of the ancient oak tree overlooking the peaceful lake, the same tree that had lived within her dreams since childhood. She rested one hand against its weathered trunk and smiled quietly, realizing that the place she had searched for without knowing its name had become the place where she finally understood herself. Ryan Whitmore approached with calm footsteps before stopping beside her. For a few peaceful moments, neither of them spoke. The silence felt complete, needing no explanation. Ryan looked toward the moon rising above the castle towers before turning back to Emma. For 7 years, I believed those dreams were asking me to search for someone I could never find, he said gently. Now I understand they were simply teaching me to recognize you when the time finally came. Emma looked into his silver eyes with warmth that no longer carried uncertainty. And I believed I had been forgotten by the world, she answered softly. Instead, life was quietly leading me somewhere I had never imagined. Ryan smiled before continuing. The dreams brought us to the same path, but they never chose our future. We did. Emma nodded. That is why I am here. As the evening ceremony began, the oldest elder stepped forward before everyone gathered beneath the lanterns. Today we celebrate neither prophecy nor ancient bloodlines, he announced. We celebrate the courage to choose compassion instead of fear, truth instead of silence, and hope instead of judgment. Warm applause spread naturally through the courtyard as people smiled toward Emma with sincere respect rather than curiosity. Daniel Carter slowly approached his sister one final time. His expression carried humility instead of pride. I cannot undo the years I allowed fear to guide me, he admitted quietly. But I hope one day my actions will become worthy of your forgiveness. Emma gently placed a hand upon his shoulder. Forgiveness is not forgetting, she replied. It is choosing not to let yesterday decide tomorrow. Tears quietly filled Daniel's eyes as he nodded with gratitude. When he stepped back, Ryan extended his hand toward Emma, not as a command, not as an obligation, but as an invitation freely offered. Emma smiled before placing her hand in his without hesitation. Around them, the gathered families applauded once more, while children laughed beneath the lanterns and autumn leaves drifted peacefully through the moonlit air. Months later, the story of Blackwood Castle spread throughout every neighboring territory. People no longer spoke about an Omega who had been traded across the border by her own family. Instead, they remembered the compassionate woman whose quiet strength united divided hearts without raising her voice. They remembered the Alpha King who discovered that true leadership was measured not by power over others, but by the willingness to honor another person's freedom. And whenever young children asked why the ancient oak overlooking the lake had become the kingdom's most treasured place, their parents smiled before telling them that sometimes destiny only opens a door. It is kindness, courage, forgiveness, and love that choose whether anyone walks through it. Beneath the same silver moon that had once connected two strangers through countless dreams, Emma and Ryan watched the peaceful kingdom they had chosen together, grateful that the most extraordinary promise of their lives had never been written by fate alone, but by every compassionate choice they had freely made along the way.